Carol, I have a confession to make. I have been singing about love this week. Love, love, love.
All you need is love?
Where, oh, where is love?
How about everybody get together, try to love one another right now?
One love, one heart. Let's join together and feel all right.
Where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love?
Carol, as painful as it may be to hear me sing, in some ways, it's a bit easier to hum a tune about love than to live into the love to which the author of First John continues to call us this week.
For the past couple of weeks, we have been exploring the letter of First John and the question of love. By now, we have discovered that the author of First John is very concerned that the community to which he writes understands the importance of love.
The centrality of love is a theme that is woven throughout the entire letter of First John and culminates in verses 8 and 16 in that deceptively brief phrase, God is love.
The writer tells the early Christian community and you and I today that all things begin in love, flow from love, are perfected through love, and return to love.
Whole lot of love, Carol.
With a surprisingly brief statement, the writer tells us what God is and what God is not. He might have said that God is power or order or goodness.
That's true, Carol. In our insecurity and longing for protection, don't we often yearn for a God who can control nature and prevent sickness or violence? A God who will protect us from all harm?
In a world of moral confusion, might we wish for a God who lays down the law with complete clarity and holds everyone accountable, catching the cheaters and rewarding the faithful?
In our hunger to possess, might we even imagine a God of prosperity who promises to make us rich and get us that shiny new car if we obey a few principles?
I think I've heard that kind of imagining on Sunday morning TV. Yet John suggests that none of these things in his brief statement about who and what God is.
Yes, whatever may be true about God's power or moral order or generosity, John, the author of First John, avoids all these descriptions in favor of the simple word love. It's not power or law or prosperity, but love that looks outward. It is agape, which is the Greek word for love, not the Valentine's kind of love, but love that seeks the good and well being of everyone. Our families, our communities, our world and creation, that kind of love.
Agape is the heart of the truth about God. How do we know this? Not by imagining or philosophizing or debating, but by looking, by experiencing. Think about someone who has impacted our lives in a profound way. Maybe they believed in us when no one else would.
Maybe they challenged us in a way no one else could.
Maybe they simply wrapped their arms around us and said it would be okay.
Or maybe they didn't say anything at all.
Whatever they did or did not do in word or deed, they loved us unconditionally, wanting the best for us, not because it served them, but because they loved us.
That is agape, and it deeply affects all aspects of life.
God has acted in love, and we do not have to guess what God is like. We simply have to look at what God has done. We cannot see God, the author tells us, but we can see what God has done. For the author, writing to this community, the greatest example of agape love can be found in the example of Jesus. We have seen and testify, he writes, pointing back across intervening decades since the time when Jesus lived and died, invoking a memory still fresh enough in the hearts of this early community. The writer reminds them that they know God is love because they are part of a community that has a memory of witnessing and experiencing God act in love through the person of Jesus.
Some in the community received love through the stories told by Jesus. Some received forgiveness and mercy. Some experienced compassion, and some experienced justice through his words and actions.
Some in the community stood at the foot of the cross and watched the suffering of outstretched love. Some in the community prepared the body for burial, seeing firsthand the wounds caused by an unjust world met with love. Some in the community doubted, only to have doubts transformed by the presence of a love that cannot die.
God is love. More than power or even goodness, God is love. Restless, creative, self-giving, opening, flowing out into the other, coming back in new wholeness love.
Tucked away in verse 7 is the claim that we know God by seeing what God has done. But seeing is not enough. We know God in the fullest and most authentic sense only when the love of God flows through us. God is love. Only the one who loves can know this love that is God.
Love is not a concept known abstractly, it's an action lived concretely. It's not enough to remember Jesus' self giving love, to think about it, or even to be moved by it. We must live it, the author declares. To know the God of love is to live the love of God. Bishop Michael Curry, in his book, Love is the Way, writes, God so loved the world that God gave. God gave. God did not take, God gave. That's agape. That's love. And love such as that is the way to the heart of God and the heart of each other. It is the way to a new world that looks something more like God's dream for us and all of creation. What Dante spoke of as the love that moves the sun and stars.
Curry goes on to say, we must always make love our priority, for love invites the world to see the face of God when it might otherwise feel absent. There is power in love to help and heal when nothing else can.
The author of First John is very clear on one thing in particular. What we cannot do is to claim to love God while refusing to love the sister or brother in front of us. Love and hate simply cannot mix. We tell lies to ourselves when we claim we can love and hate at the same time. God is not in the business of hating. God is in the business of loving. Our only job as followers of Christ is to be the face of love by witnessing to the love of God that came to us from Jesus himself. Curry is right. Love is the way, and thus it must be our first priority.
The author of 1 John points us to the two great parallel commandments, love God and love your neighbor. These two are tied together, he tells us. Not only must we obey them both, it is impossible to obey the first without also obeying the second. We love because God first loved us. God's love transforms. God's love meets us where we are and takes us to where we need to go. Love is the outpouring of the transforming spirit that permeates all things, making them holy. As someone much wiser than myself once observed, love is the only thing that has ever changed the world for the better.
So, how then do we love as God calls us to love? How do we, Carol, follow daily the footsteps of love rooted in Jesus' journey? How are we inspired by these words to grow in love?
To quote Bishop Curry again, the way of love will show us the right thing to do every single time. It is our moral and spiritual grounding and a place of rest amid the chaos that is often part of life. It's how we stay decent in indecent times.
And we need not fear, for God's perfect love casts out fear. We are made in love to give our love to one another in the way that Jesus gave his love with agape, giving his whole self unconditionally to heal us and redeem us. With God's love, we have the power to go into the world fearlessly, to act lovingly, even if imperfectly.
Deanna, perhaps we might end our time of reflecting on God's love with these words from Bishop Michael Curry. When God, who is love, becomes our spiritual center of gravity and love our moral compass, the world changes for the better, one life at a time. So don't give up on love. Listen to it, trust it, give into it, obey it. Love can help and heal when nothing else can. Love can lift up and liberate when nothing else will, for God is and always will be love.
Thanks be to God for love like that. Amen.
Amen.